www.wadr.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Your current affairs program, Citizens Hour, is now more inclusive, more educative, and brings you a broader perspective on political and governance matters. This quarter on Citizens Hour, we spotlight issues on democracy, civic education, women and youth participation in governance, and other policy issues. Every Saturday, starting at 10 a.m. and a repeat broadcast at 6 p.m. on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM, Dakar. Also, don't miss our special monthly debate, which comes up every last Saturday of the month on trending political and governance issues in the sub-region. Citizens Hour on West Africa Democracy Radio. It's your time to speak.
Hello there, and thank you for joining us on this edition of Citizens Hour, your democratic citizens engaging and current affairs radio program. We are coming to you live from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM in Dakar, Senegal, and online at WADR.org, and full of live streamings on YouTube and Facebook. Citizens Hour comes to you live every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. here in Dakar and 11:30 a.m. in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, bringing you more engaging conversation. I am Imo Edet here in Dakar, and I do have my colleague Usman Mar in Abuja, co-anchoring the program. Usman. All right, while we wait for Usman to join us, we want to thank all of our listeners and viewers who are joining us via our Facebook page and our YouTube. Usman, are you there now? All right, our first topic looks off the pitch and beyond the game, following recent legal rulings surrounding AFCON. Now, we will explore the implications for sports governance and the legal precedent this set for African football. We ask, does this ruling protect the sport or expose its vulnerabilities? Meanwhile, our second discussion shifts to the Gambia, where the government's new national press accreditation policy and online content regulations have sent a chill through the media landscape. We're asking, how are these regulations a necessary step or media safety and standards, or a strategic tool for stifling dissent? Well, stay with us for all of this and more.
Citizens Hour on West Africa Democracy Radio. It's your time to speak.
All right, welcome back. Let's go straight to our guests who are already online. Joining us for topic one, we do have Barrister Kesiana Iwo. He's a policy lawyer and a public legal education practitioner. We also have Cleve Kiaze, a senior sport journalist, joining us all the way from Uganda. Much later, we'll be joined by Francis Boniface, our in-house sport analyst. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I can see you both online. Thank you for joining us on the program, and it's good to have you. Welcome.
Well, happy to be here. Good afternoon from Kampala, Uganda.
Indeed. Kesiana.
Happy to be here. Good morning from Nigeria.
Indeed, good to have you both joining us on the program. Well, I'd like to start with a general question to you both. Perhaps, Cleve, you there in Kampala, what was your immediate reaction when you heard CAF's decision? And do you think this aligned with fairness in terms of football?
Well, my immediate reaction was, it is fake. But after thinking it was fake, I realized that it was actually an official press release on the CAF website, which made it legit. But also, without a doubt, just to answer your question, you feel it is something that paints African football in bad light. This is something that we've said time and again, to have a decision of the competition decided off the pitch by an appeals board that you want to feel did not pay attention to the rule book or the different rules around the game that would have determined their outcome after Morocco went out there and appealed. You feel that they did, or the decision was made. Personally, I feel the decision was made out of pressure because you've had so many things suspended by Morocco because of what happened in that final that was played on the 18th of January. And one of those significant ones for me is the Women's Africa Cup of Nations, which, as we speak at the moment, was supposed to be going on in Morocco. But CAF postponed the tournament with 2 weeks to go. When they postponed the tournament, they never confirmed in their press release if Morocco was still the host of the tournament or if the tournament will go elsewhere. So you feel that Morocco had tried to put or pressure CAF in a certain corner, telling them if the decision was not made in this direction, probably the ties they had with the Conference of African Football were going to be broken. The reason why CAF were put in a situation where they broke their own rules just because they were trying to caress Morocco's ego.
Well, Cliff, just before I switch to Cassiana, do you think this is because of the huge investment and that Morocco has done in the last 2-3 years in terms of football in the continent, and that's why this ruling tends to favor them? You think it's because of that?
Well, the investment is one thing, and the investment they have tried to put in African football was never going to guarantee them winning the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations. They needed to go out there on the field of play to compete and win the championship. They got themselves into the final. Unfortunately, they weren't good enough because the best team on the night went out there and win. And without a doubt, because Morocco has been very receptive towards African teams, you can see in the World Cup qualifiers, in the AFCON qualifiers, all these teams that never had pitches approved to host international games were hosting their games in Morocco, and I'm told free of charge. But also as a build-up to the Africa Cup of Nations, you could see the investment they put, especially in media, PR and stuff like that, to try and publicize and make noise about the Africa Cup of Nations. But for me, I feel everything started when they made the semifinals of the World Cup, and their former coach came out and said that if they are to be the best team in Africa, they need to go out there and win the Africa Cup of Nations. I thought for me from that day, they put pressure on themselves. And if you followed cleanly all the games they played from the opening game of the championship against Comoros all the way to the final, you felt that Morocco weren't free. They weren't playing like a team that is the best on the continent. They played with a lot of pressure. And because of that, you could see that even the officiation, in a way, people thought was hell-bent on trying to carry Morocco into the final. So they invested a lot in African football, without a doubt, but that was no guarantee for them to win the Africa Cup of Nations. They needed to come to the pitch and compete. Unfortunately, they weren't able to compete. And because they weren't able to compete, they decided to put out their frustration and anger towards arm twisting CAF and stuff like that to come out with the decision that they came out on Tuesday night.
Indeed. Well, we'll be speaking more with you because you were on the ground there in Morocco during the tournament. Let me cross over to Abuja. Usman Umar is back.
Thank you very much, Imo. It's good to be back. We're struggling because it's been a struggle here with the network, but it's better late than never. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining the program. Very sincere apologies for joining late.
Usman, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, all right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. All right, let me go straight now to Cassiana, who is also joining us from Nigeria, and he's a legal expert on this, and I also understand that he's also a sportsman. Well, Cassiana, from a legal standpoint, did CAF correctly apply its regulations in this case?
So yes, I'll just say yes. So I'm obviously looking at the CAF regulations, specifically Article 82 and 84. that deals with if a team leaves the ground without the permission of the referee, and then the sanction prescribed in Article 84 that says that the team that contravenes 82 will lose, forfeit the match through him. So if you look at it from that perspective, so literally from a bird's eye view, you will say yes, CAF actually applied its rules, and CAF actually has powers to apply its rules retrospectively. Although the disciplinary committee just impose fines and bans, but then the appeal board, as we know, decided that they should apply 82 and 84. So yeah, so to that extent, yes, CAF applied its rules. However, we have the international laws of the game that says the referee is the one that
has the final say
of a match. And yes, the players left the field for 14 minutes thereabout. They came back, the referee still continued the game. So is it conflict between the CAF rules and the laws of the game rules? But for me, I'm just thinking about this as it happened. I'm thinking, okay, so does it mean that players can just walk off the pitch for a few minutes, come back, and then they just get fined? So what is the implication of actually leaving a game of 14 minutes? Because for that 14 minutes, because it's sports, it's football, for that 14 minutes, the players are just there. That's the guys that were not, that's the Morocco team. They were still on the pitch. So then the other guys are kind of behind, they're resting, quote unquote, because they're not actively playing football for 14 minutes. And they come back to the pitch. So should it be that you just find them and ban and just impose some fines and bans and then that's it? So I'm looking at it from that perspective and see how this whole situation is actually an opportunity for us, for CAS, to actually determine this whole thing, so that moving forward, teams can know, or countries can know the consequences, because you can't just walk up a game and then just feel like, oh, they will fine you and ban you and it's fine. So there needs to be like proper scrutiny around that.
Well, there's so much talk about Article. Just a moment, Usman, please. There's so much talk about this Article 82 and 84 that was violated by Senegal. Why are people not talking about the final whistle, which is supposed to be from the referee on the pitch? Kasena, this is for you.
Again, like I said, the final whistle, yes, the referee has the power to do that, but like I explained, these guys walked off for 14 minutes, came back, and they won. So, and also, I think from a policy point of view, what does it mean to actually forfeit a game? What does it mean to abandon a game? Does it mean that if you walk off for 5 minutes and come back, it's not abandoned? Or does it mean if you go and never come back, it's not abandoned? So I think there's a gap. That's just my view. I think there's a gap this has revealed a gap in the system. Because if I look at this from the point of view that, okay, these guys walked off, you said they abandoned, but then they came back. So does it mean that they did abandon it? So I just think that, I'm obviously looking at CAS's history of this kind of cases, they'll probably overturn the decision, because they always look at issues of fairness and principles of justice. So I think from that angle, because the referee did not end the game, the referee continued the game. So to that extent, the referee still has the power to have the control over the game. So from that perspective, I think the referee's decision should have been what should have stood.
Usman.
All right. Yes. Yes, I know that rules are actually always made to protect the integrity and dignity of the game, just like the legal practitioner, Kisiana, just explained. But I want to go back to Mr. Clive. Where should the interest lie? Just like our elections here in Africa, where elections will be held in the field of play, ballots will be cast, but in most cases, the courts end up giving victory to whosoever. The question I would like to ask is, between trying to uphold the rules of the game and protecting the integrity, and of course, the interest in the game, because CAF is just beginning to gain that kind of momentum that we've been clamoring for. And then for this to happen, where do you see us heading with this kind of decisions, where court or arbitration centers will now be the ones to hand over victory or failure to teams, as it were?
Well, without a doubt, it is a situation that is going to damage the relationship of so many people on the continent. Without a doubt, the sporting relationship between Senegal and Morocco is not going to be the same, but also the sporting relationship between Morocco and the rest of the Africa and the rest of the continent, which is historically going back to when South Africa was trying to bid for the World Cup and Morocco didn't vote for them, coming back when Morocco was trying to bid for the World Cup, for the 2026 World Cup, and several countries on the African continent didn't vote for them, reminding them how they didn't vote for South Africa. And now you have this where somebody goes out there and wins a competition, and because you are a bad loser, you'd want decisions to be made in boardrooms and stuff like that. For such as me, I see lots of irregularities because if Senegal is being punished and they say they forfeited the game, then if the game was forfeited, why didn't the referee end the game on that day of the final? The referee didn't end the game. Senegalese players were convinced to come back onto the pitch and continue with play. If Morocco felt that the game shouldn't have continued or the game should have been forfeited by Senegal, why did they allow to continue with play? Because they allowed to continue with play because they thought they had a legitimate chance to go out there and win at the championship. When the players returned on the field of play, why didn't the referee book them? Because the law allows him to book everyone. And while Senegal is forfeiting the game, why isn't the referee punished? Why isn't the head of referees, who we are told convinced the referee not to book these players who return on the field of play, get punished? So there are lots of irregularities, and those irregularities, like we said, are going to damage the sporting relationships of the different stakeholders. Because imagine the thing is going to the Court of Arbitration for Sports, and the Court of Arbitration for Sports is reversing the decision. The entire continent will be celebrating, and Senegal and Morocco will be disappointed. So you have relationships damaged from this fourth moving forward, and you don't like the fact that so many people are desperate to prove to us how the CAF president had nothing to do with this and all that. This has nothing to do with the CAF president. It has everything to do with how the decision was handled, without paying keen attention to the repercussions or implications it's going to have on the game of football on the African continent.
Very well. Kasena, let me comment at this point. The Federation here in Senegal, they have issued a statement the other day and denouncing this ruling by CAF. And of course, they have mentioned that they will be heading to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is CAS. Now, what legal grounds do you think they have in this appeal?
Obviously, as we're discussing, has to do with the what they call. So it's not proportionate in terms of the fact that we walked off the pitch, but should the punishment now be that we now lose the game that we have already won, quote unquote? So I think that for me is the major ground, and also the AFCON regulations relied on. The argument could be that it's actually at variance with the international laws of the game, specifically 5.2 says that the referee is the final arbiter as regards to a football match. So in this case, like I've established, the referee, they came back, they continued the game, he blew the final whistle. So if that happened, then how is it that you're saying that we forfeited the game? So I think those are the two grounds or strong grounds I think that Senegal will have an opportunity to appeal their judgment. And I think they should actually see it to reasonable conclusion. Not because of obviously that affects them, but I think it's actually, for me, I see a sort of opportunity for us to actually develop or grow the regulatory frameworks in Africa in football. And if the CAS overturns the decision, which is likely to do, then I think we now consider possible amendments to the AFCON regulatory framework, specifically setting out what does it mean to abandon a game. What does it mean? What does it mean to abandon a game? Because that. So basically, I think the appeal board interpreted them working off as abandonment. But the question you now ask is, but we came back. The referee didn't.
Of course. They didn't just come back. They continued, and the referee was there until he blew the final whistle.
There you go. So is that really abandonment? So the question now is, whatever decision CAS actually determines will be a good way to now see how we can amend the laws to make it, should I say, more clearer? Because the laws actually doesn't say anything about what happens. Okay, if you leave the pitch without the referee's permission, okay, what if you come back? What happens? How long can you be away for? So yeah, these are certain things that I think. So I actually see an opportunity here. Beyond the fact that it looks bad for African football on the global scale, but I see an opportunity for us to actually improve our legal frameworks.
Okay, but before I let you go, Kesiana, there are people who are already advocating for an independent judicial body within the African football that will be entirely separate from CAF's political and executive branch influences. Do you think this is also a way forward?
So I want to say yes, but given the nature of things in Africa in terms of you hear so many bodies, they have the name independent. But at the end of the day, the people that are going to man those bodies, they are people that are known to the people who are in the system. So the question you ask yourself is it really independent? Or will it just be just on paper? If that makes sense. So I think we just need to have the actual will, because the way the system operates in Africa, if the CAF president, for example, or board has a say on who becomes in those independent committees, then it's like a waste of time. It's the same. It's like an extension of CAF. So I think Africa needs to just think critically about the implications of our decisions on a global scale beyond our personal achievement and interest. So that's what I would say on that.
Okay.
But I also feel, for me, sorry to cut you short, that independent board, we have it in the appeals board, because according to the explanation of the CAF president, the video he released this week, they asked their member associations to submit names of lawyers and judges that they feel should be on that board. But unfortunately, on the same board, you have a member from Tunisia who is the FA president of Tunisia. So the board ceases to be independent because you already have a person who you would say is conflicted in a way. But for me, that is the board that is supposed to be independent and looking at all these things with an independent mindset, because they are legal brains. They are supposed to help interpret these rules better and apply them. But unfortunately, in this incident, they showed that they weren't independent. Yet it is supposed to be that independent board.
Let me just. Please give me a chance with Clive.
Please go ahead.
Because he was there in Morocco, as I need to understand, right?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, I was.
All right. And now I have colleagues back here in Nigeria who are also in Morocco, and when they came back, I think the initial conversations we started having was that they just hope that Morocco will not approach the Court of Arbitration because of these rules. And I was kind of how would that change? We even had a very serious argument because they held that should Morocco approach the arbitration court, definitely there will be something that will be overturned. Now, being on the ground and you watched the game, you were there, you saw everything, you saw the trophy handed over to Senegal and every drama that happened. What was your initial reaction? I don't know if Imo had asked that, but I really want to hear from you.
Well, of course, with all the drama that was going on, personally, I was hoping the game continues. I didn't support the thing of going off the pitch. This was the final of the Africa Cup of Nations, the biggest sporting event on the African continent. You have over 2 billion people watching from across the globe. So for me, in that incident, it was not a good image for African football. We were putting our linen out there in the public for everyone to see. But also remember, as a build up to this competition, the tournament had become under scrutiny. There was a lot of stigmatization around the tournament. Is it a major tournament? It's not a major tournament, and stuff like that. So with all those things happening, we gave justification to those people who were downplaying or undermining the African Cup of Nations. So much as Senegal returned on the pitch and play continued, you felt the events in those 17, 20 minutes didn't really paint a good picture for African football out there in the public, because all these events were live on TV.
Well, Cliff, there have also been comments from Westerners, especially those with the European clubs. They have really talked down on AFCON because they feel this is one tournament that gets to disrupt their league system. Do you think this also corroborates what they have been saying, talking down on the championship?
Yes, without a doubt. First of all, without a doubt, it does disrupt the system, playing it in January when some competitions are going on and all that. When you look at all the major tournaments in the world, yes, sometimes we want to be selfish because we're Africans and it is our thing. But when you look at all the major tournaments in the world, they happen in the summer. The Euros will happen in the summer. The Asian Championship will happen in the summer. The Copa America will happen in the summer. The World Cup will happen in the summer. The FIFA Club World Cup will happen in the summer. And over the years, the Africa Cup of Nations is the only tournament that has always has been happening in between seasons. When they tried to have it in the summer, we got issues. We held the one in 2019 in the summer, the one that was in Egypt. When it was about time to hold the one in Cameroon in the summer, they said it could not be held in June and July because the weather conditions at the time would not allow. The pitches wouldn't be in good condition because it was going to be a rainy season in Cameroon. I think it was the same thing when it came to Ivory Coast and stuff like that. So it is us as a region that don't have a consistent calendar for the Africa Cup of Nations. This edition, we are holding it in June and July. The other edition, we are holding it in February and January and February. This particular one, we held it in December and January. So because of those inconsistencies, people have come out and labeled it as a tournament that is probably not major, a tournament that is not important and stuff like that. And we are the people who have given the Western media or the international media to portray the Africa Cup of Nations that way. We need to find a way of being consistent when it comes to the calendar of how the Africa Cup of Nations is played.
And let me cross over to Kessiana Usman just a moment. Now, a new kind of warm-up has been opened by Guinea, and they have officially asked CAF to review the outcome of the 1976 AFCON, arguing that Morocco's title should be reconsidered in light of CAF's recent decision to strip Senegal of its 2025 crown and award it to Morocco. Kessiana, what do we have on our hand right now with Guinea bringing back this issue?
Yeah, that's the implications of this kind of decisions, I think, which people don't really think about, in a moment. Like my Mr. Clive said, obviously, out of pressure, they might have given such decision. But now you have a situation where Guinea is saying, okay, since this happened, then let's also explore that. But obviously, I just think it's just a joke taken too far. I know I even saw some posts on social media during this period where they said the World Cup that Maradona used his hand has been overturned. So I think it's just people just trying to just should I say play to the gallery and just see what they can get out of the system. But I think how this thing will the most important for us now is for CAS to actually determine this thing within a reasonable time. And I understand that Senegal is appealing, so CAS should see how quickly they can determine it so that we can avoid all those kind of jokes, in my opinion.
Well, Clive.
You call it joke. I don't think Guineans take it as a joke.
Yeah, this is a statement from the Guinean Federation.
1979, come on.
No, but the Guineans also probably we need to visit the competition rules and regulations in 1976. Currently, Morocco is arguing, based on the competition rules of 2025, 2026, the current competition rules. Probably if the Guinea case is to be had, they need to look at the competition rules at the time. What were the rules saying if a team walked off the pitch?
But do you think they don't have a case in this stance?
Exactly. It's the question I actually wanted to ask Kessiana himself.
Kessiana, you think they don't have a case?
Do they actually have a case?
like my colleague said, because I think the rules now are from 20. The rules that AFCON used are from like 20. I can't remember the year now, maybe 2022 or so. Yeah. So these rules they're always amended from time to time. So it's a case of, are they going to determine the decision based on the recent rules, which is before us now, the one that Senegal is using, or are they going to use it, go back to that one? So the question now is, can we go back in time to now use the law in time to now determine the decision now? So I think it's a bit tricky, to be honest. It's really, really tricky.
Do you think this is setting the precedence for sports competition here in Africa? Because in the next tournament, I may lose, and then I said no, I will have to go to the CAF committee to ensure that I get my title back. You think this is going to be a problem in the future?
So if the decision at the moment stands, then it might be a problem. Or it will be a problem, obviously. But if it doesn't, which I think it won't, then that will be a good precedent. So people now know what applies. And also, the CAF rules, like I said, will need to be reviewed so you can specifically state out what constitutes an amendment. Sorry, I beg your pardon. And what constitutes abandonment, so that we're clear on, so that players don't just. And also, I think what should be the consequences of walking out of a game? It can't just be, my opinion, just a ban or a fine, because you can just say, okay, hey, let's go to the game. When we're bored, we can walk out, since we just get a fine and we'll come back. So these are the issues that I think we need to look at critically, so that it doesn't look bad for the sport.
Quite interesting.
Let me go over to Cleve, because being the man on the ground, there are people who have also, related this incident to what happened between Nigeria and this country, Libya. And of course, I don't know if the two scenarios are the same, where, of course, Nigeria, fearing threats and being attacked, decided not to go for go to the pitch, and they were actually awarded some points in that incident. Do these two incidents have similarities?
No, they don't, much as they both set a bad precedent, but they don't have similarities. In the Nigeria-Libya similarity, one team refused to show up. So in this case, the other team is awarded a walkover. In this case, a game is going on. One team is not happy by one decision of the referee, and they decide to walk off the pitch. When the game is going on, then they are later convinced to return and play continue. Much as the other one is a walkover, the incident over Senegal and Morocco, if the referee was following the rule book, or if the referee was guided well, he should have ended the game there and then. Instead of convincing Senegal to return to the pitch, when they return to the pitch, he does not actually issue out yellow cards, because the law allows him to issue out yellow cards. So was that
an error on the part of the referee? Because he could have ended the game at that point.
I think it was a guided error by his bosses, because, like we said, at the time, you are trying to manage the situation. The world is watching. It is the final of the Africa Cup of Nations. You don't want an incident where you have a competition like that having an ending like that, where the final ends prematurely and somebody has to be awarded. That is why Senegal were convinced to get back onto the pitch. And we've had also reports are coming in that the head of refereeing actually advised the gentleman from DRC not to issue yellow cards. Because if you convince Senegalese players to get back onto the pitch, you're actually supposed to book them, because they left the pitch without your consent. And in booking them, probably others who were already on yellow cards were going to be given red cards and sent off. But he did book anybody, they return, and the game continues. That is why we say the issue of forfeiting in this case does not apply, because you convince Senegalese players to come back. If Senegalese players didn't come back onto the pitch, the referee had the authority to end the game, and in his report, he puts that Senegal forfeited the game. So because of that, Morocco awarded the game and the 3 goals. But I'm very sure the referee's report has that the game was played to competition. Of course, he did report the incidences and stuff like that, but the game was played. So there is no way the game was forfeited. Because even when the decision is made by the disciplinary body that refused to apply Article 84, and the appeals board that eventually applied Article 84, and the Court of Arbitration for Sports, when they are looking at all these incidences, well, the document that will be central in that decision is going to be the referee's report. What does it say? Does it talk about forfeiting? Because Rule 84 talks about forfeiting, and 82. The referee's report does not talk about forfeiting because the game resumed and it was played to completion.
Kasiana, wasn't all of this considered? Yes, Usman.
Okay. Yes, I just wanted to ask, which would have been the lesser evil for the ref to have ended the game right there and then when the Senegalese player walked off the pitch, or the one we have at hand at the moment?
The lesser evil was the appeals board to do what the disciplinary board did, not to apply Rule 84. But unfortunately, by doing so, it meant that whatever pressure or threats Morocco was throwing at CAF and the rest of the continent were now going to be put in place. If you've noticed, in the last 3 or 4 years, every CAF event, or you can say 90% of the CAF events, are being hosted by Morocco. You're talking about the awards, you're talking about different workshops. Right now, they are hosting the Under-17 Women's World Cup. The Africa Cup of Nations was postponed because of this issue. So the right thing was to not apply that article, but that meant that whatever relationship or dealings the CAF was having with Morocco were going to end, and probably the future of that relationship was not going to be the same again. Now, people are talking about how Patrice Motsepe is the CAF president, but we all know that Laksa Fuzi, much as he's comfortable by being the first vice president, he's a very, 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 very strong pillar in the CAF executive, but also in his Moroccan government. So a lot was at stake. That is why they went with the decision they made, and the CAF president has actually welcomed the idea of Senegal going to the Court of Arbitration for Sports, and he came out and said that whatever decision comes out of the Court of Arbitration for Sports will be respected. The big question is, how will Morocco behave or react when the Court of Arbitration for Sports now overrules what the CAF Appeals Board has ruled?
Well, I wanted to ask Sienna if these were
please.
taken into consideration, report from the referees of the tournament in reaching this final decision.
I mean, I believe so. I mean, I wonder how they would have arrived at a decision without the report of the referee's report. But again, some of these things are subject to interpretation. There's a way I'll interpret the document different from the way you interpret the document. So I think maybe they felt like them walking off the pitch without the referee's permission. So you give it his literal meaning. They walked out without his permission, so it means you are forfeited. So I don't have to say, oh, the guys forfeited the game. If I say, oh, they walked out without my permission, that if that means forfeiture, that means forfeiture. So I mean, I believe they looked at the reports to determine their decision.
Is this an indictment?
Let me ask here, please. Just on a lighter note, because a lot of people have been wondering. Okay, let's assume that this judgment stands. Now the trophy is in Senegal. The other day we saw the president of Senegal. He put up a brief profile with the trophy behind his back, as if saying, "If you can't, come and get it," kind of thing. So the question that a lot of people have been asking: what will be the procedure? Will there have to be another ceremony where Senegal will return the gold medal and the trophy while they receive the medal given to Morocco as second place and all of that? What will the procedure be? And Cliff, you should also be preparing your response to this. Kisiana, you go first.
That will be very interesting to see. I think obviously if CAS, which is the highest sporting body, determines a decision, it's like a Supreme Court in Nigeria, for example, to give a decision, and you must respect it. If you don't respect it, obviously there are possible sanctions that could come. So I would think that if CAS agrees with, I mean, it's even crazy to think about, but let's assume CAS sides with the decision of the panel, that Senegal will left no choice but to abide by it, and abiding by it will mean to return the medals, return the trophies, and possibly come for a ceremony where they will what they will be presented with their silver medal as opposed to their gold medal. Because if not, they can face sanctions, suspensions, which they don't want to, which they may not want to. So I think all of this is just in the moment. Obviously, the decision is too fresh in everybody's minds. Everyone was taken aback. So whatever reaction we're getting now is just based on the CAF decision and the instant case. So I'm sure over the next few weeks, by the time CAS determines, I'm sure that tempers would have been down, and because it's CAS, they might feel like, okay, this is not a neutral body, this is an international body, this is not Africa's leadership involved, so they might now, okay, whatever CAS determines, then we have to follow it.
Okay.
Cliff,
Yes,
over to you.
for me, without a doubt, Senegal will have to respect the decision of CAS. They will have to return the trophy. They will have to return the medals. Now, what CAF, because they will be returning to CAF. Now, what CAF does with that, we'll probably wait and see. But the way I know the Moroccans, they would want a special occasion where the trophy is handed over, where the medals are given to the players, and celebrations will continue. I mean, just having the decision coming out on Tuesday night, if you saw the pictures and videos, the Moroccans hit the streets, the fans, and they started celebrating and jubilating. So we just need to wait and see what will happen if CAS maintains the decision, and how CAF will handle the bit of handing the trophy over the medals and the crowning ceremony.
Well, as we round off this first part of the program, Cliff, let me stay with you. Moving forward, how do you think decisions like this will affect confidence of fans in African football, especially, how we regard AFCON as our own World Cup? Do you think that interest will be there, especially coming from sponsors, coming from investors, and people who really want, love that competition?
I think fans not so much, maybe sponsors, those that want to associate themselves with the championship. They will have to think twice. I mean, just imagine Total Energies had just renewed their partnership with CAF coming into this competition, and you have all this going on. So I don't think fans will be affected a lot moving forward, but you believe that such things don't happen again, especially with the next Africa Cup of Nations. I'm imagining the 2027 Africa Cup of Nations that Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania are going to host. And Morocco, every time they're showing up on the field of play, they have fans booing them because of what happened. I'm looking at that scenario where Morocco are going to be booed every game they will be playing at the 2027 Africa Cup of Nations, or even moving forward, because what just happened is something that so many African football fans across the continent don't really subscribe to and don't support.
Exactly. Well, but for me, I would want to ask Kisiana, as part of the recommendation you've earlier tabled, which is, of course, having a more comprehensive legal backing for decisions like this, should it also include what should be done in the process that a decision like this is reached with respect to how the trophy is returned and how it is handed over to the beneficiary of the judgment? Because whether we like it or not, we're at this stage right now. Whatever happens going forward, there is already a dent on the image of CAF and its ability to host a hitch-free competition. So should the reforms, so to speak, of the regulations also include detailing how the handing over should be done?
Yeah, I think the regulation should be as detailed as possible, because so that there's no, just to avoid leaving the door ajar for any form of uncertainty, to use that word. So yeah, I think this whole debacle has just showed the gap within the system, because once there's any gap, the arbiters or the people in charge can find a way to make it stick. Because like I said, if you read 82 and 84, it looks straightforward. These guys walked out, so this is the punishment. But then if you look at it deeper, you realize that if it was spelled out, what is abandonment? Does coming back mean that you didn't abandon? Can you abandon? Can you apply it retrospectively? And what are the specific consequences for that? So I think, like the question you asked, you specifically state what happens. Game has been played. There have been exchanged medals. after the judgment, where does the trophies, who does it go back to? What's the process for that thing to be returned to the eventual winner? How long should that take? When should it be done? How should it be done? It should be possibly say the other team to be there so that they can shake hands, so that you know that all is well. It's not like no be quarrel like we say in Nigeria. You know, all is well. So I think that's what I would say on that.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, gentlemen. I actually wish we have more time for this conversation, but I think we've been able to do justice to this. We want to sincerely thank you, Kisiana Igbo Ohogore. I hope I got that correctly. I always have a problem with Delta people's names. Thank you very much. He's a policy lawyer and public legal education practitioner. We also had joining us with very deep insights from the pitch, so to speak, Mr. Clive Kaze. He's a senior sports journalist. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on this segment.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. All right, even just joining us, this is Citizens Hour coming to you live on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar. And we're also live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. It's time to switch over to our second topic, Usman.
Yes, the second half of our show, we turn to the smiling coast of Africa, where the media fraternity is anything but smiling at this very moment. The Gambia's recent push for stricter accreditation and broadcasting controls has raised alarm bells. Imo.
And to discuss this issue with us, we are being joined by a panel of experts to look at whether these policies provide safety or signify a squeeze on the Fourth Estate. We're joined by Mr. Madi Jabate. He's the Executive Director, Edward Francis Small Center for Rights and Justice. And we do have Mr. Sharif Saidi Khan. He is the Vice President, the Gambia Press Union. Gentlemen, thank you so much, sirs, for your time, especially finding time to join us in this Eid to be part of the program, and welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be part of the Citizens Hour by the West Africa Democracy Radio.
Indeed.
It's a pleasure to join you here.
Mr. Jabate, you're welcome, sir.
Welcome, both gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to be here. I mean, yeah.
All right. Let me start with Mr. Saidi Khan. With this big question, looking at the big picture, what problem is this new media policy trying to solve?
Well, if you look at the new policy of the government, I think their intention is to control the press through regulation, and which is not in line with the Constitution of the Gambia and other international and regional treaties which Gambia is an obligation to. So we fully recognize the intention of the government to establish ethical standard and professional journalism within the media sector, but it should not lie within the remit of state control through the Public Utility and Regulatory Authority, but in the strengthening of the Media Council of the Gambia. Because if you look at the Constitution of the Gambia, it is not in line with the Constitution in letter and in spirit, because the Constitution of the Gambia, Section 207, guarantees freedom of the press. So in doing so, freedom of expression and freedom of the press are a cornerstone to democratic governance, and it enabled the public to hold government and the power to account. So by and large, the intention of the government is to partly or in whole control the media through regulation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharif. And just to announce to the world that we actually did invite Dr. Ismaila Cisse, who is the Gambia's Minister for Information, just that we can be able to have insight on what actually is the government thinking on this very matter. But unfortunately, he later informed us that he wouldn't be able to be on the panel. This is just for public information. Now, but let me turn to Mr. Mahdi. Now, like Mr. Sharif said, the government has already argued that these policies are about professionalizing the industry. But from a human rights perspective, where exactly is the line between legitimate professional standards and state-sponsored censorship? Where do we draw the line?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so the line is drawn where, to the greatest extent possible, professional standards and ethical standards would have to be upheld and, by the media, so that in terms of the state on the other side of the line, to ensure that to the greatest extent possible, that there is no infringement, that is, space is created for the media and journalists to exercise that professional and ethical standards as required by the trade, so that in the final analysis, not only the state as a duty bearer respects and protects freedom of expression, freedom of the media, but at the same time enables, therefore, the media and journalists to perform their functions according to law, and where these two sectors perform accordingly, it enhances the rights of citizens to freedom of expression, which includes the freedom to receive information, of course, to share information, and so on. So, therefore, from a rights perspective, every law has to be looked at, or every policy, every action or decision of the government has to be looked at from that perspective. That is, to what extent does this law or decision go to enhance freedoms, rights and freedoms, or inhibit them? So that when we do that analysis from a rights perspective, what we have seen in terms of this regulation, accreditation policy and, online regulation that the government is proposing, we can see an overreach, in which it is going to limit freedom of the media, limit freedom of expression, and so on, and therefore undermine democracy and good governance itself in terms of transparency, in terms of accountability, in terms of popular participation, and all of the rest. So I would say this accreditation policy and the online regulation actually are unnecessary. So there's no problem it's intended to solve. Relating to your first question to Sheriff, there's no question problem they intended to solve. Rather, the entire proposal are the problem themselves. So that what needed to happen, they should not happen in the first place, because, as I said, there's no problem for them to solve. Rather, what the ministry and the government should be doing is to see, how do you support existing mechanisms? Sheriff is the vice president of the GPU. They have a media council, which is a self-regulatory body that the ministry, the government, is supposed to support that, to strengthen that. But at the same time, the ministry that is of information and the government as a whole are supposed to remove draconian laws, policies, practices within our state system, and which actually have been recommended by the Truth Commission that we had set up, that had made recommendations, of various laws and policies and practices that should be removed, from the system. That has not been done since 2021 when the Truth Commission submitted its report. All right. So now we get to this point, and for some of us who've been in this for that long, it reminds us some 30 years ago, or 25 or 24 years ago, in 2002, when the dictatorship introduced what they call the Media Commission bill that they passed into law, just like these current proposals, also demanded media houses and journalists to register, with an authority that they had created, the commission they had created in that act. And it was a relentless fight until 2004 when that act, that obnoxious draconian act, was repealed. So what we are seeing 24 years later, today in 2026, is the government now coming back with the same Media Commission Act, defunct one, with this accreditation and policy, but making it even wider and more severe and more draconian.
Well, let me cross over. Yeah. Let me cross over to Mr. Sheriff. Well, what are the concerns from GPU around this accreditation and content regulation? Like Mr. Madi has mentioned, it is wider now, capturing even online media content distribution.
When we carefully peruse the government accreditation policy, we detail it and analyze it in our position paper, because they wanted to give an overarching mandate to the Public Utility and Regulatory Authority to monitor content and other powers that be, in line with the accreditation policy. So we felt the need that is a non-starter, given the nature and the historical nature of press freedom in this country since the former regime. The media face and is continuing to face repressive laws, which includes the Cybercrime Bill 2023 and the government use of false information, false publication intended to silence investigative journalists. So having said that, the Gambia should know that it is under the obligation of international and regional treaties. The Gambia is a party to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. That charter was interpreted by the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. So if you read through its declaration of principles, the principle 6 stated that media regulation must protect journalistic independence, and also journalists shall not require to obtain licensing from the state to practice journalism. So these are our concerns that we raised and submitted to the ministry a week or so ago to maintain our stance on media freedom and media independence in this country.
Is the GPU calling for consultation of some sort on this draft proposal?
Well, we've held series of consultation meetings at the ministry. We laid down our stand that the government, through the Ministry of Information, should strengthen the Media Council through legislative backing. So in doing so, the Media Council, that is the MCG, as a self-regulatory mechanism body, will have the powers, if it is strengthened with a legislative backing, to issue accreditation to journalists. But that should not be that the government should decide who should obtain licensing to cover government functions. So back and forth, the series of meetings that we held at the ministry with the MCG, in some instances, the MCG also maintained the same similar to GPU. So by and large, this is our concerns that we submitted to the ministry to maintain that we must see journalistic independence in this country.
Mr. Jabati, I mean, election is not too far from now. Do you think the government has anything in mind regarding that, bringing up this proposal at this time?
Oh, certainly. I mean, I think, the sad reality is the growing shrinking space, civic space the shrinking civic space in the Gambia by law and by practice. And, these proposals reflect that. And in these proposals, in fact, they have targeted elections, that media houses must register, to cover elections. All right. So that, it's a control mechanism because ultimately you would have to, the potential is there to prevent certain media outlets or certain journalists to cover the elections because probably of their independence, their, reporting. But at the same time, in these regulations, they have, and the policy, they have put in place certain mechanisms, sort of control coverage content with vague language, that are discretionary at the end of the day, so that, these proposals for me are not coming just by accident or, just in the normal course of things. For me, these proposals are particularly calculated, to respond to the times, the circumstances in which we are. That is, this is an election year, and every effort must be done to control information flow, purposely to ensure that, there is control in how media should do its work in, for transparency, for accountable elections, and so on. So I think it's well calculated towards that.
Okay, Mr. Madi, let me just add this before I let you go, because you've also responded in a way that makes me begin to question whether this is actually about elections or not. But even this law, even if these very laws that are being proposed now are not strictly enforced immediately, seeing that election is just around the corner, how does the mere existence of these broad regulatory powers create a chilling effect on investigative reporting regarding government corruption?
Yeah, well, I don't know where they are. I think the intention is to implement it because these are regulations that probably government, it will be approved at the cabinet level and it will be enforced. So they may not have to take it even to the parliament. All right. But then to that question, therefore, yes, it creates a chilling effect. If you look at the contents of the, accreditation policy, but also the online, content and broadcasting, policy, regulations, you would see direct reference to issues that are about, the work of media. In terms of that content, what they would consider to be, say, false news, what they would consider to be prohibited content, and the mechanisms put in place in terms of who determines that is very broad and very vague, to the extent of even putting an obligation on or giving the authority power to PURA, that is the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, which in the first place we should say is a utilities regulator, not a broadcasting agency. It's for telephones and telephones, internet, and utilities, water and electricity. You are giving them a broadcasting role, so that authority is given that power to effectively ask journalists to disclose their sources. And so when that happens, exactly. Therefore, you are undermining investigative journalism. Because over the period, if you are also in this country, you will realize that investigative journalism has been growing and getting more powerful and creating a real impact. We just had the parliament approved a report of a parliamentary inquiry into the way the former dictator's assets were disposed of by the government from 2019, to date, and the, corruption, the looting, essentially, the disregard of the law that was, applied, the misconduct. And that came about as a result of an investigative journalist doing work to expose what had happened 6 years ago, 8 years ago. So that and many other stories we've been seeing over the past 9 years, from 2017 to date, a lot of the issues coming through investigative journalism. So with this policy, therefore, investigative journalists are under threat because you can be forced to disclose your sources, you can be taken to court for prohibited content, for false news, and things like that. So in effect, you are just going to kill investigative journalism in this country with this policy and this regulation.
All right, let me move over to Sharif or Imo, because I'm sure he has given us a perspective of the union. But I want to ask, comparing Gambia to other countries within the sub-region, such as Nigeria, who in 2015 enacted the cyber crimes law, and it covers a wide range of activities that also affect somehow the works of journalists. What is Gambia's current trajectory? And I mean, is the union looking at it in any way that truly there could be justification for introducing this type of laws at this very moment in the Gambia?
Yes, I think still now efforts are underway to repeal these repressive laws, because if you look at the last current global press freedom index, Gambia was ranked 58 globally and 11 in Africa, which is a significant decline. There are numerous of factors that resulted to this decline, ranging from legal perspective and economic. Legal perspective in the sense that the cybercrime bill still continue to hinder the work of investigative journalists and also critical dissent in Gambia and beyond. And also if you look at the economic aspect of the press freedom in this country, they are broad and numerous. Chief among which is the rising operational cost of print mainstream media, and also the lack of government subsidy to the press. Though the efforts are underway, it is at an stage for government to bring the media subvention starting this year. But still we want more repeal of these criminal offenses bill that continue to hinder our work and our performance press freedom index globally and in Africa.
Well, Mr. Sheriff, just a follow-up to Usman's question. I mean, the supporters of this reform act, bill rather, are saying that it will combat misinformation and disinformation and also promote professionalism and responsibility in journalism, and then it will also bring order to an unregulated digital space. Is that the case right now in the Gambia?
Well, that is they're saying that the online space is not regulated, but also the online space have formed an association called Gambia Online Media Association, that they have gathered a huge effort to register the online space, to abide by the ethical and professional standard by the GPU and globally recognized journalistic practice. So their worry is that the online space is unregulated. We've seen citizen journalism. We've seen the democratization of the media. Now every citizen will create an online space and do the work of a journalist. So this is their concern. But also what we maintain is that now we've seen the democratization of the press since 2017 to date. But also what government need to do is to strengthen the media council to effectively do its mandate. Because though the media council, their work has not been visible, but they have been doing tremendous work.
Mr. Sharif, when you say strengthen, please, in what capacity?
In human resource, and also in finance. Yeah.
Okay.
Because
let's go ahead.
Because the MCG is a voluntary body. It's a voluntary body set up by the Gambia Press Union since 2018 to effectively address complaints and ethical violations across the media sector. So they have been doing quite well, though their work has not been visible due to one or two many reasons. But behind the scenes, they have been able to address many complaints against the media and also ethical violations. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Jabata, where do we draw the line between balancing regulation and freedom of expression?
Yeah, so sometimes I look at them as two sides of the same coin, or in fact, the same coin, because certainly journalists have to be responsible. The media has to be held to account in what they do, just like any other trade. And of course, we also know in our constitution, the media has been given a constitutional role, that is to hold the government accountable on behalf of the people. But of course, as I said, journalism is a trade which has its tenets, its ethics, professional and ethical standards that must be respected, upheld at all times. But again, it is in those ethical standards themselves, those professional standards themselves, are inherently a regulation of the media itself, because through those ethical and professional standards, by abiding by them, you prevent, therefore, a journalist harming individuals or interests or anyone else by its work. And so to go further, to have a regulation, as we are seeing from the government, it should come with that mindset that it is not to limit the work of the journalist, knowing the constitutional role of the media, and the very idea of the media in the first place, that whatever regulations we bring should be to still enhance the capacity of the media to do its work in a harmless way to society. And I think that is what should drive the government, and not to see how do we rather prevent, disable the media from doing its work. So the line is thin, one can say, but at the same time, with or without regulation, the very idea of media ethics inherently includes a self-regulation mechanism. And as Sharif has said, beyond that, the GPU went further, which we have seen in many other countries around the world, to create a self-regulatory mechanism which was not done unilaterally by the GPU, but government, particularly the Minister of Information before this current minister, were well involved, were well informed, and cooperated to make sure we have an internal mechanism since 2018. So as Sharif rightly said, what is required is to support that mechanism, all right? And so that we do not need, as I said, these proposals at all. But even if we are going to create these proposals, that thin line is what needs to be borne in mind, that we will bring these proposals with the idea, with the intention to enhance professionalism, development, and effectiveness of the media, and not to hamper it. So unfortunately, these proposals have gone beyond that thin line to now encroach into the capacity, the professionalism, because when you read these proposals they are bringing, it generates that feeling of self-censorship. And the moment you have self-censorship, then professionalism is undermined, you know. And so I think therefore these proposals have gone across that thin line, but certainly that line is maybe thin, but it's very obvious that media has to abide by professional ethical standards, and regulations should support media and not to hamper the media.
Yes, regulations are supposed to support media and not to hamper media. I think that's very profound. And this now takes me to Mr. Sharif, the Vice President of GPU, because if you look at some of these recommendations, there are fees, registration fees to be paid, and there are documentations to be submitted, and a whole lot of other bureaucratic hurdles. Do the GPU see this as a way to price out some independent and critical voices? Because I want to understand that these are largely, these regulations actually are largely focused at online platforms, which of course meant to enhance the democratization process of free media. So by way of recommending these registration fees and other hurdles that they have to cross, are we pricing out critical voices from the media space?
Absolutely. They are actually trying and intending to price out critical voices and independent investigative journalists that are holding the power to account in recent years. The content accreditation policy has gone beyond online content and media broadcasts. If you look at it at a wider scope, they also targeting critical and investigative journalists that are also producing content in the online space. So for them to face through an uphill struggle through registration of their content, of their online platform, which definitely will hamper the independence and freedom of the media. So in doing so, the government need to, through the Ministry of Information, need to devise strategies with a new paradigm shift and harm the press, rather than coming up with these policies that are not inconsistent with international standards globally.
Well, Mr. Jabate, are we seeing a broader trend of this media stifling, or some reforms that will tend to stifle media practice across the sub-region?
Yeah, certainly. I think what is evident across the sub-region, we may see successes, isolated successes, here and there, but I think what is evident is by law and practice, the attack on the media. Practically, if you go to any of our countries, you will see media houses being, either closed or threatened with closure, journalists being arrested or facing trial. And, what are the offenses? Sometimes administrative, they will bring tax issues, registration issues, but also content issues. And which is really concerning, because ultimately the extent to which the media is free also determines the extent to which citizens enjoy freedom of expression and even political participation. So this is, the reality of our sub-region, which personally I have raised in multiple platforms, so that even new governments that we seen and are joyful about, such as in Senegal or Ghana, and those who came to democracies, or whether it's Sierra Leone or Nigeria and so on, these instances seem to be increasing and not reducing. In the Gambia right now, a journalist just last week was assaulted by the police for merely taking pictures outside the courtroom, and he's been subjected to a police charge, reporting every other day. without being taken to court, and sheer impunity. So now we see this kind of laws or policies being proposed. Not to mention the fact that other laws currently exist which are also draconian. I mean, the ECOWAS court has made rulings, in 2018, 2017, on media-related laws across the region, including the Gambia, to say they are, undemocratic, they violate community rules. So what is happening in our sub-region, therefore, is really concerning, because when you look at the other side of it, is what do we see? Increased corruption, increased abuse of power. I mean, gross inefficiency within the state, and therefore all of the dire socioeconomic conditions that our people are subjected to. And all of that is simply because accountability is limited, and accountability starts with the media, because media brings the transparency necessary for accountability to take place. Without transparency, how can accountability take place? Since government itself will not be proactively transparent on its own. Our governments have, shown that. You go from Gambia to, Nigeria, from, Cote d'Ivoire to Senegal, from, Sierra Leone to Liberia to Guinea. I mean, governments are engaged in all sorts of contracts on our extractive industries, government spending, and so on, for which there should be transparency in terms of the, agreements that have been made, in terms of the resources being, extracted, in terms of the revenues being generated. And, of course, therefore, the services that are to be delivered to the people. But all of these are issues you will find that there is limited to no transparency, so that our people just exist in this region without knowing what is being done in their name, on their behalf. All right. And so the only people who can bring that transparency are the journalists, and now they are under attack. It's totally unacceptable.
All right. Let me go over to Mr. Sharif as we round up, because our time on this segment is also, coming to an end. So very quickly, Mr. Sharif, as your last words, what should we be expecting from the GPU in the coming days in respect to this very proposal by the government?
Well, thank you very much. We are still engaged in the ministry. In fact, last week we supposed to held a meeting, but it subsequently fell. But on our side, we are pushing effort to engage the ministry, to definitely bring in line measures that will promote, will defend press freedom and independence of the media in this country. Because we don't want to go back to the dark days of repressive rule, where the media freedom was stifled, the hostile environment of journalists was definitely unbearable. So we don't want to go back to those days. So looking at this policy, it evokes a lot of memories of the press struggle of the past regime under AJJ Jammeh. So we don't want to go into those books. We wanted to maintain that journalists are free, and the independence and freedom of the press shall never be compromised in this country.
Indeed. And to my final question to Mr. Mahdi, in the coming days, is there going to be a reversal on the steps taken by the government on this draft proposal?
Well, officially, government has not said they have withdrawn this. I have heard from other quarters. And so I don't know what their next steps would be. I would assume, since they have not declared any reversal, they are going ahead with it. But I mean, as a human rights organization, the Edward Francis Moore Center for Rights and Justice, we are monitoring this space. And of course, we will protest against this if it comes to pass. That would include, taking the matter to court to challenge it, its unconstitutionality and, its illegality by international and regional standards that the Gambia has ratified and is committed to. So we are raising our voice at this moment. We've issued statements to condemn this, But further, we are watching this space, and as I said, if they go ahead with it, we will take a counter action.
Indeed.
I want to say sincere thank you to both of you gentlemen for your time on this very segment and on this platform particularly. I want to say sincere thank you to Mr. Madi Jobate. He's the Executive Director, Edward Francis Small Center for Rights and Justice. And of course, Mr. Sharif Saidi Khan, he is the Vice President, the Gambia Press Union. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to be here with you. Thank you so much.
And that's the much we can take on this edition of Citizens Hour. We have examined the ripple effects of the AFCON ruling and the state of media freedom in the Gambia. Usman.
And indeed, you can find this broadcast and others in the past on our website, WADR.org, and on all our streaming platforms. Thank you for listening, and join us next week. I am Usman Umar. Thank you for your time.
And we want to thank our followers on Facebook and YouTube. I am Imo Edet. Coming up next is Midday News. Goodbye.
Citizens Hour on West Africa Democracy Radio. It's your time to speak.